Now on to our main topic, which is looking at the brand new spiffy Unearthed Arcana, packet number 3 of the 1D&D playtest. Looking at Clerics, the life domain subclass, new species rules for the Ardling, Dragonborn, and Goliath.
Wow.
And a few other little fun doodads in there as well. Whew. So we have a new class. Now we see what the 1D&D playtest is going to do with classes. Let's start with the Clerics. The Clerics are members of the Priest group, along with Druids and Paladins. And I just want to say, Clerics have always been very problematic for me, not because of who they are, but because of how different they can be from each other. A potential story world building power is somewhat restricted or made incongruous with the mechanics. So what I mean by this is you are telling me that a cleric of the love god and the cleric of the war god are going to have the same abilities. It's hard to do that with a single mechanic. And so I've always had that problem with this, going all the way back to, as early as you would have a god and it affected your abilities in D&D. I've always had issues with that. And it's not that they've done it poorly. It's just it's very hard to do. There's always something that doesn't quite fit depending on what kind of deities or what kind of pantheons you're dealing with. When we get to turn undead, I'll have a lot to say about that. And I'll just leave that there.
Yeah.
I'll let you get a word in edgewise here.
Well, yeah. Clerics are strange, It's like initially they didn't have spells at first, and then there've been all kinds of issues with they became as powerful as fighters through spells, and just the game has struggled with how to give them a role. But I honestly think where 5th edition is pretty good. So my big question going into this is, well, why are we messing with the cleric? What are you trying to do? I find the cleric to be quite playable class. If we're going to do anything to it, would probably be to go a little more towards 4E, where you say that, hey, the cleric isn't sort of as tied into the kind of healing role, that healing is a little easier to do in an auxiliary form, which again, 5th edition does reasonably well. So it's not a big problem. Looking at it, much of what you see in the 2014 version is still in this Unearthed Arcana. But what really happens is there are some tweaks to when things come into play. And I think a lot of it is around the fact that they're putting in subclasses. So it's almost like, hey, we need to change the subclass to no longer be at 1st level. That all classes must have them starting at 3rd. Therefore, the cleric, being one that got it at 1st level, where you chose what your god is, it has to move into 3rd. And so therefore, let's just end up making all these little changes. And that's fine. I think the biggest thing that people ask themselves, the question I saw a lot on Mastodon and other places, was people saying, what's going on here? I'm level 1 cleric. I don't have my divine domain now because that's a subclass. I'm going to get it at 3rd. So for my first 2 levels, do I know who my deity is? And I don't have a problem with that, with what's happening, but I think that they should explain that, right? That we should get an understanding of what it means to be a level 1 cleric. Because I think that needs readdressing, right? I'm obviously receiving spells. So what is my faith, and what does it mean when at level 3 I'm choosing a domain, but I've played 2 levels worth of play? What do you think about that, Shawn?
I think it is a problem that's not very difficult to solve. And as you said, you can still pick a deity, a pantheon, a tenet, a belief, a moral to live by, and you are still getting your power from a greater being than you that represents that. And you can, you are worshiping the goddess of love, and then at 3rd level you're like, okay, I need to choose a domain, a subclass. I'm going to take destruction. That's fine. You can as a player see the destructive nature of love and make a fun character with that. Or the opposite, right? Your god is of war, but you can then at third level, take peace as your domain and just say, well, where there's war, there's peace. So I worship the god of war, but I want to curtail his power and let him rest by bringing about peace. You can do all of those things. As long as the game tells you at first level you should choose something that you believe in, that your character believes in. It could simply be.
Can we pause and just? I think you've pretty much everyone listening to this is going to play one of these two clerics you've just described, because these are both great concepts.
Right.
Like, follow the war god to shoot peace is great.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it could be, you could do anything with any domain. Right. You could be the worship the fire god, but take the ice domain. It could be anything if you make the domains so that they fit.
100% on board. The rules don't tell me that, right? And
exactly.
And that's the key, where I do think everybody's comments are valid, that there needs to be a little something that tells you what's up here, right? Like at level 1, pick your god, or pick a concept, or tell me where you are in the process, because I'm not like a regular character that might just pick a deity. This should be different, and I should understand the nature of what's happening here, I think. And then similarly at level 3, tell me what that next piece remains, right? You're choosing the domain, and what you said is awesome, right? Like, I wish the book would tell me, hey, you can play against type, right? You're following the war god, but it's because you want to achieve peace, right? Like, those kinds of things are great. None of it is here. And so I love what you're saying, and I want to see that show up.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, it's not a difficult fix. It's a paragraph or two of flavor text that just describes that and gives you examples of different things you could do. And then not only are you making it work for people that want to play 2-type, obviously, right, the destruction domain and the war deity makes sense. You could go in so many different directions and make some really cool characters. So I'm not afraid of that at all.
So Shawn, instead of getting this domain choice, what you get at first level is what used to be at second level: Channel Divinity, your favorite. It's back. And you get 2 options right off the bat: Turn Undead and Divine Spark. So everybody has not one thing in common. They have 2 things in common. And you don't get it once, as it was before, and then later get it more. You get it proficiency bonus number of times, and now refreshed only on a long rest, not on a short rest. So more times up front, longer refresh. And the 2 options, Divine Spark is a dual option. So you can use it to either heal a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus to one target within 30 feet, or deal damage using those d8s to a target, and they get a con save for half damage. So nice little offensive capability. Turn Undead is now imposing the dazed condition, which is new in this packet. So they can only, and it says that if they dash, they must move away. There's some lack of clarity there that I don't know what the undead really has to do, but I think the intent is what they're doing is, since they can only do one thing on their turn, either an action or move, they must move, and since they must move, they must dash away. So it's pretty similar, just using the verbiage from the new packet. It's significantly stronger than the current cleric, the 2014 cleric, because you're getting this feature way earlier and more times per day, right? Go into some undead filled tomb and you can turn twice, right? And or heal more or whatever. And so it's kind of interesting to see this as a bit of a power up, I think.
Yeah, I have a lot of problem with Turn Undead. This I like the Divine Spark in that it's something, as I mentioned at first, it's something that bridges that chasm between drastically different kinds of clerics being able to do the same things. Here, okay, you can heal or you can hurt. You can make a claim that any kind of cleric worshiping any kind of deity could make those work. Turn Undead, for me, story-wise, there are some cleric, so I have no idea why they can turn undead. I don't know what their god has to do with undeath, uh, but it's there. So I don't like
Well,
turn undead
it's a
as a story
holdover
thing.
from our world, right? Which is the idea that
Exactly.
priests hold back, have domain over the dead, and hold back,
Right.
whatever, anything that would go wrong, which is often around this idea of undeath and
Mhm.
possession
Yeah.
and ghosts and spirits and whatever.
I can get behind that sort of, but I don't like it as a mechanic either,
Mm.
because it's just an unbalancing mechanic in terms of adventure design and encounter design. Um, a lot of times it makes a little sense story wise. The rule here is just bizarre. Uh, I understand why it was written this way. The only action the creature can take when it's turned is the dash action, and if it moves, it must end that move further from you than where it started. So you're holding out your holy symbol and saying, "Be gone, foul spirits," and they step 5 feet away from you, and okay, everything's good. And well, I mean, they can't act,
Hmm.
but everything's good.
And then
It's
everybody
just so
beats only one of them because it ends when they
right,
take damage. So, hmm.
and it's not like anything else in the game. And it takes this one kind of monster and makes encounters with that kind of monster sort of weird and irrelevant. And it, if you again, it's resource management as well.
Yeah.
If you're in an adventure where you have 12 encounters in a row and each one is with low level undead, all right, the first time you can take care of it, but then you still, if you run in where there's only 2 encounters and both encounters contain a large number of undead, well, you just sort of made that whole encounter weird,
Yeah.
right?
And
Because
it is
of the
still a
yeah
saving throw, but yeah, we've all seen this. If you've played D&D through a bunch of editions, yeah, it becomes, like, oh, I have a very good wisdom bonus, and so the save is hard, or a spellcasting bonus, and so the save is a hard one. Wisdom is not always something that monsters have a lot of, especially in dead. So now they, all run for the hills and everybody fights one at a time, and it was all easy. And now it's happening more times per day. So,
yeah
because I mean, 3 times
yeah
that if you get to the next level of play, next proficiency bonus, and you've got 3 times a day, that's a lot, right? That's a lot of rooms of skeletons or zombies you're just laughing at. And because of the way that it's working now, I think the DC is going to tend to be a little harder more often. Because one of the things that
mhm,
happens in 5th edition is it becomes less likely that it'll work at higher levels. But this, I
mhm.
think, makes it probably a little more effective as well. So,
Yeah. I mean, I would almost rather have it be a spell
mm,
that certain
mm,
clerics could cast
mm,
and do something different to make it interesting combat wise, rather than just this weird, all right, everything runs away. We beat on the one. All right, he's no longer turned, but you can all beat on the one. Go track down the next one, beat on him.
yeah,
Okay, it's
sure,
make it a 30-foot radius around the cleric that they can't get into unless they make their save. Then you can have characters dodging in and out of this zone that they can't get into, and your archers and your spellcasters could stay
yeah,
in it. And it becomes a little at least more interesting rather than just this whole runaway thing. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I hear you.
But yeah. Uh, I will continue on with spellcasting. They have the same number of spells per level as before. We get a suggested spell list, and then ones you can pick your own. Cantrips are now called 0 level spells, and the prepared spells must be on the divine list. Then you can pick new ones and restore slots at the end of a long rest as before.
Yeah. So level 2 is, now there's no channel divinity or maid feature, so we only get this thing called Holy Order. And the Holy Order feature is you choose a sacred role, which may be part of a religious order. And we get one of 3 roles: Protector, Scholar, Thaumaturge. Protector, you get proficiency with martial weapons, heavy armor. Scholar, 2 skills from a list. And when you make checks with them, you add your wisdom modifier as a bonus. These are Arcana, History, Nature, Persuasion, Religion. So, sort of like knowledge areas. And what's cool about that is that this finally corrects the gap where you would say, like, hey, I want to know something about the religion in this temple, and they'd be great, make me an intelligence religion check, and you would fail because you're a priest and you have a good wisdom. Now you can add your wisdom bonus. Um,
Mhm.
so that's interesting. What do you think, Shawn?
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like this holy order idea, and I like this idea of the scholar in particular being able to add their wisdom bonus.
Mm-hmm.
I would get rid of persuasion, and
Mm,
I would just keep it
yeah,
as the intelligence based ones.
right.
Uh, Otherwise, you might as well add deception to it, because we might have a cleric that's going to use
Yeah,
their thing, or what's the other one? Intimidation, right? Oh, the
right.
priest bears down on you, and
Yeah.
you are intimidated by it. So I
And
would just
charisma is a
get
little
rid of
more of
that.
a likely thing. So I think this is sort of a makeup, not a
Yep.
bolster. And so yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
That's good
Yep.
feedback.
Well,
Thaumaturge
I
is the
like.
third. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No,
I was
I was going to say
yeah.
Thaumaturge is the third one, and you gain one extra 0 level spell from the divine list. And you also, when you finish a short rest, you can regain one channel divinity use.
Oof.
And I like what they're doing here. This is addressing the problem that I had that I talked about at the beginning, which is you have so many different kinds of clerics. The designers have acknowledged that here. They've acknowledged the fact that we are going to have clerics that are more fightery types. So let's give those clerics the protector. We're going to have the more cloistered types, so let's give them the
Mhm.
scholar. We're going to have the more magic focused types, so let's give them the thaumaturge. And I would like to see this expanded, even used a little more than it is,
Mm,
either with more types
mhm.
or with more skills as you, or more abilities or stronger abilities as you increase in level.
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and cut to the fact that you are going to get this again at level 9.
Right.
And I've now called Holy Order, okay, same name, Holy Order. And
Mhm.
basically what they say is pick another of these three. And I'm like, whoa, I really liked
Yeah.
Holy Order at level 2, but now just take another? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like there should be different choices.
Right. As the protector, if you chose protector, you can now blank. You get this
Yeah.
other thing. If you took scholar, you can do these things. If you took thaumaturge, you get these extra abilities or these stronger abilities. That's what I want.
Yeah, or sort of like if this is like representing sort of this ethos that you have around this, maybe level 9 could be, at this point in your career, here are the kinds of choices you're making, right? And let's dig into that, because otherwise it just it's too easy for it to become like a power dip, or it feels like you're just collecting
Mhm.
features rather than concepts. And so I'd rather it be another concept, but that's over at level
Mhm.
9. Um,
Yep.
Level 3, we have subclasses, the life domain we'll talk about in a bit. Level 4 is feat or ability score improvement. Level 5, we now get, instead of destroy undead, which was sort of the ability to use your channel divinity to kill, to just wipe out the undead entirely, we get smite undead. So what happens now is when you turn undead, you can roll a proficiency bonus number of d8s, and the undead who fail their save and are turned also take this extra damage, which presumably doesn't end them being turned since he did damage to them.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd never
Yeah.
liked really destroying undead, the whole looking up the table and finding that no,
Mhm.
the CR is too high or whatever. I sort of felt like that never worked well play wise. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
At fifth level, you're, if assuming that you're all cleric, um, you're rolling 3d8. So yeah, that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 points of damage to things.
Yeah.
That's
You're not
decent.
you're not killing a zombie, but it's
Right.
it's something that matters, especially since it's AoE, so it's pretty good.
Well, it's radiant damage too, so against
Oh yeah.
undead that may have a big,
That's pretty
you
cool.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, level 6 is a subclass feature. Level 7 used to be nothing, and the cleric has more nothing levels than anywhere before, or any other class. But now we get blessed strikes, and this is kind of a little bit like, you could choose the proficiency in heavy weapons and armor. This is the same kind of thing. It's a thing that we used to see in certain domains brought into the core. So blessed strikes is you can deal 1d8 radiant once per turn when you hit with a cantrip or a weapon, right? So it sort of bakes in that ability. Um, I find it a little unexciting, it feels like a math fix to me. I never liked it before when subclasses had this.
Mhm.
But it now makes me think, gee, how does this interact with, say, a Tasha's subclass that gives me this as well?
Mhm.
Do I get both?
I'm making the I don't know sign.
So this is one of these compatibility things that if it's the same thing, well, then I didn't get a feature.
Mhm.
If it's both, well, now I'm adding 2d8. Is that really what the game intends? In the video, Crawford talks about how they're gonna, tweak some things and stuff. So I think that's the kind of thing they'll have to ask because it creates that kind of compatibility question. Um, but I guess, yeah, so you get to do a d8 to try to keep you a little more competitive with other classes. Level 8's a feat again. 9 is that holy order we talked about. 10 is subclass. 11 is what used to be a 10th level divine intervention. Basically the same kind of thing, which is that you appeal to your deity. I know a lot of players forget to do this. I have one player in one of my groups that loves doing this and role plays it and makes a big deal about it at the beginning of the table, and then sees whether they can get away with some cool spell being cast. So this is the same as before. The interval between successes is now 2d6 days instead of 7. So the
Mhm.
average is the
There you
same,
go.
but we roll. Okay.
Yeah.
Levels 12 to 17 is feat subclass or nothing. There's kind of nothing to talk about here. Level 18 is greater divine intervention. And so this is kind of like before. It used to be your level 20 ability. You now succeed without a roll to call on your deity. And it refreshes every 2d4 days instead of 2d6. Okay, fine. Level 19 is your feat. Level 20 is your epic boon. I'm on record for not loving epic boons, but they're still here.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then we get
Yeah.
our prepared spell list of what they think you should take, which I think is great. And you make it easy for those people who want to not choose spells. Here you go, take that. And that takes us to the life domain subclass, Shawn.
Yeah. So this is interesting in the sense that it's not terribly different than the life domain that we had before.
Mm-hmm.
So at third level, you get those domain spells, and although the spell list has changed, um, you no longer get level 1 spells since the
Mm-hmm.
domain starts at third. Makes sense. Um, at third level, you get Discipline of Life. It's the same as before. You're adding 2 plus a spell level to healing amounts of your spells, and you can now but it now says for the turn you cast the spell only to prevent bad interactions.
Yeah, and I
So
forget. Someone told me there's something in Tasha's that is pretty problematic with the way this works. So this kind of says only on this turn, right? You get a bonus to healing amount, but only on the turn that you cast this spell, not for
Mhm.
future. Even if the spell's ongoing, it doesn't keep ticking off extra amounts.
Well, it's like Goodberry,
Yeah.
right? It's you cast Goodberry and then every berry does 1 plus
Mm-hmm.
something as opposed to just 1 hit die. That's one of the ways I saw it used.
Okay. Hmm.
At 6th level, you have Preserve Life. This is the same as it was before, but it no longer prevents healing an undead or construct. 10th level, Blessed Healer, same as before, but it clarifies that it requires a spell slot rather than being a level 1 or higher. And
I
then
get that
14th
zero
level,
level
Supreme.
clarification. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At 14th level, Supreme Healing is the same as it was before.
Okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it shows that they were happy with the life domain, I think, from before and didn't, clarification here, a tweak there, but nothing really um,
Yeah.
that stands out as terribly different.
It was one of the stronger ones, so I'm glad it didn't get stronger, right? Because it was surprising to me to look at the rogue class in the last pack and think, well, the rogue is one of the, you know, cl- classes everybody loves. Wait, they made it stronger, huh? Interesting. So glad this being a favorite, it already worked. It basically is the same. Good.
Mhm. All right. You want to talk about the Ardling?
Yeah, so we get 3 species in here. Ardling, the story has been refined and tightened to be an evolution of celestial animals in the Beastlands in the upper plains. Still not sure why this would be in a core book, but I felt that way about Dragonborn and ended up loving him, so maybe it'll be fine.
Well, I'm going to tell you why,
Yeah,
Teos.
go for it.
I'm going to tell you why, because people love anthropomorphic species. Uh, Now, not all people, but enough people.
Mm-hmm.
You got the. I couldn't even remember all of the anthropomorphic species that we ended up getting by the end. We have turtle, we have tabaxi, we have the gif, we have the loxodon. We could go on and on. And what's the rabbit one?
Oh yeah, the
I have a player
here
playing
and
it right
gone.
now,
Yep,
but
here
yeah,
and gone.
the Heron God. Yeah, all of those. and they want people to have that ability to play the cute little furry thing or the big gif thing,
Yeah.
but they don't want to have to create 27 different anthropomorphic species. So what they're doing here is they're saying, hey, you can play any anthropomorphic species you want. You could play the badger people, you could play the skunk people, you could play any of the people you want. You can just use this. But what they got, the feedback said, this is too much. The beast lands, what? So they're like, yeah, let's not even worry about the beast lands. Let's just give you the ability to make any of these little funny, fuzzy species that you like. That's
Yeah.
the answer.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it is kind of funny. And just to rattle some of these off, so like bear, cat, lizard, squirrel, bat, eagle, owl, raven, deer, dog, horse, triceratops, crocodile, dolphin, frog, shark. Those are your options for the Ardling. Oh boy. So before they could all fly, now you get to choose your mode of transport, and this translates to an animal. You're a climber, or you're a flyer, or a racer, or a swimmer. And they do things like give you a climb speed once per turn with an unarmed strike that deals extra damage. That's the climber. Flyer, you can use a reaction to fall and take no damage, and you gain advantage on jump checks. Racers, take the dash action. Your speed increases for that action by 10 times your proficiency bonus. That's a good boost. 20 right off the bat. Swimmer, you can hold your breath for up to an hour at a time. Swim speed equal to your speed and resistance to cold damage. There are going to be some here that are way more popular than others, obviously, due to just the kind of environments you tend to face. But yeah, maybe you're just so in love with that Triceratops face that you've got to get for yourself that you're going to be down with the Ardlings. The Thaumaturgy spell is interesting to sort of represent that divinity you have. And then I don't understand this wording at all, Shawn. Help me here. The Thaumaturgy spell. When you finish a long rest, you can replace it with a different 0-level spell from the divine list. Doesn't that mean that I just know all divine cantrips and I just choose one?
Oh boy, that you can innately channel minor divine magic, the thaumaturgy spell. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace that spell with a different 0-level spell from the divine list. Yeah.
I mean, unless
why
I'm role
don't you
playing on
just
the day
say,
I was born, I think I just know all cantrips
yeah,
and can
you
choose any
just
cantrip on the
know
divine
all
spell list.
divine. Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yep. Yeah, that was weird.
You have proficiency in perception because I guess regardless of what your form is, you've got great ears. And there's no more of this choice of legacy where they tried to do a sort of almost like, exalted heavenly ideal, like almost like alignment plane based. And what I really love is there's no more of this look at this table of type versus spells that you get as bonus spells. I'm really glad that's gone. They used to also all be resistant to radiant damage. So I like it better. I don't know that I needed this. Like, as you said, there are a lot of animal things, and I'd almost more easily sign on and saying, make the Tabaxi core. Or, another one that's sort of a fan favorite. I don't know that we need this as a core. But, hey, I could be wrong. Everybody let me know how wrong I am.
I will let you know how wrong you are right now. No, it's I feel like the D&D world is split on these anthropomorphic animals or anthropomorphic races, right? Some people love them, and all the jokes that go along with playing a cat, or all the jokes that go along with playing these different species, they love that. And then you get the people that just roll their eyes, right? Oh, I'm DMing and I've got this super serious game, the elves versus the dwarves versus the orcs. And then in comes the menagerie. It's P.T. Barnum coming in with
Yeah.
the circus full of, and they roll their eyes at it. And the eye rolling is partially because there isn't a great world building story for many, if not any, of these creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see the designers being tasked with doing this impossible thing of making the people that don't like these sorts of characters like them because they have a history to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the history didn't work for the first touch, the first thing. And so now they're trying something else. I don't know if it's possible to get the peanut butter and chocolate loving fans out there to
Yeah.
come to a Reese's moment.
Yeah, and it may
Here.
be that we just have to kind of like get over it, right? Because Dragonborn, I mean, if I think about it hard enough, I go, why are you like, what? How many dragons are out there causing Dragonborn to exist, or what ancient civilization? And so when it isn't like during Foray where there's an explanation why the Dragonborn were in the Forgotten Realms, it's sort of like, where did you all? What's the world? Okay, we just forget about it. It's fun to breathe fire or ice or whatever, and so here we go.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dragonborn.
Speaking of Dragonborn, yeah. Uh, I'm going to let you talk about the Dragonborn.
Yeah, so the previous UA was just a 15-foot cone, and I guess that saw some complaints. So now you can choose, is it a cone or a line? Up to you. Is that better? I don't know. I think what people wanted was the sort of like acid is a line, fire is a cone, but whatever. I don't know that was a big issue for me. Before we had damage of 1d10 plus character level. Now it's back to 1d10, and you add a extra die at certain levels. So it's 2d10 at 5th, another 11th, and so on. You no longer speak Draconic. Okay. Instead, at 5th level, you can temporarily sprout wings as a bonus action and fly for 10 minutes for refreshes with long rest. I don't love this version better, Shawn. I'll just say it.
Yeah, once you get 20 different versions out there, it's hard to reconcile them all.
Yeah, well,
So.
I think this undermines. They just finished doing versions for fizz bands. I don't, and I don't know that people were super complaining about much in the 2014 version. Like, just do the tiny little bit of polish someone might have wanted then. I don't, yeah. But yeah, Goliath.
People will complain about everything, and I'm going to complain
Yeah.
about Goliath. No, I'm actually not. So as a Goliath, your move is now 35. It was 30 in Mordenkainen's. And we get a stronger link to the giant ancestor that you have come from. You get to choose your ancestry with a different choice for each giant type. So for the Cloud Giant, you get Cloud's Jaunt. As a bonus action, you can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you could see. Misty Step, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Fire's Burn from the Fire Giant. When you hit a target with an attack roll and deal damage, you can also add a d10 fire damage to the target. Okay. Frost Chill from the Frost Giant. You can see what's coming here. Attack roll, you deal damage, you get an extra d6 of cold damage, and its speed is reduced 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Okay. Hill's Tumble, Hill Giant. When you hit a larger or smaller creature with an attack roll and deal damage, you can knock that target prone. Stone's Endurance from the Stone Giant. When you take damage, use your reaction, roll a d12, add your con modifier, and reduce the damage by that total. And Storm Giant is Storm's Thunder. When you take damage from a creature within 60 feet of you, use your reaction to deal a d8 thunder damage to that creature. You can use all of these equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. Yeah,
I mean,
I'm cool.
Yeah, pretty powerful. Some of these.
Yeah.
I think they're highly desirable. They're fun things that people would want. The 5th level, again, we get this 5th level thing. I'm like, oh, wait, are they going to give every species a 5th level thing? So at 5th level, you can take large form and gain the ability as a bonus action become large if there's enough space. Last 10 minutes, or can end early with a bonus action. You have advantage on strength checks, and your speed is increased by 10 feet once per long rest. Probably the biggest thing is that you can increase the area of effect of some spells or the number of targets you could hit, but that's probably not too big a problem. Hopefully.
Powerful build, advantage on saving throws to end the grappled condition. Makes sense. Count as one size larger for determining carrying capacity, and push, pull, and lift weights. Do you know the rules offhand on push, pull, and lift weights?
It's based on your strength, how much you can do it, right? Or
yeah, I see. I had to look this up because I have a character who is driving me absolutely around the bend with his grappling and trying to move people around. So I actually had to look up, and he's a Loxodon, so he's trying to do it with his trunk.
That's awesome.
So it's it's interesting. It's you can lift up to 15 times your strength.
Okay.
It's quite a bit, right? It's even with a 10 strength, it's like you can move 300 pounds. And then if you try to, maybe it's move 300. And then if you try to lift, it's 15 times. But then you sort of become encumbered. And so that does a whole thing as well. And that's getting into encumbrance, which is a little weird. So it's an area of the rules that I don't even want to bother with, but a character is doing some grappling and picking up of enemies and moving. So I now need to do that.
So I guess this can make you a better grappler. I don't see it come up really in any other situations, and I don't even know that for grappling. I've seen DMs look this up, which is interesting. I think this is fine. It's interesting. It has more. I generally like menus of choices. I just don't know. Again, it's not like this is so much better than the previous version that I'm like, oh yeah, finally I want to play Goliath. Like Goliath was always fun.
Yep. You know what? We are at a long time, and we still have feats and all the updates to the glossary to go. So I was going to give us a cutoff here, and we can always talk about it next week when we get into chapter 9 of the Player's Handbook, which is all about combat.
Sweet.
So a lot of that we will be covering there anyway. Anything you want to add before we head toward the exit?
Nah.
Okay. So thank you, Teos, for sharing your insight with us. And thank you to our patrons for helping us keep this show afloat. Thank you to our Master of Dungeons supporters. We give a special shout out to our Master of Realms supporters in our show notes. And for our Masters of the Multiverse, you get a special shout out right now. Craig Bailey, Steve Bissonette, Evil John, Darren Chandler, Robin Dermy, Andy Edmonds at Nerdronomicon. I can finally say it right. Ben F., Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, Brian King, Travis Lee, Eric Mengi, Nayanakra, Falcon Neal, Drago Russo, Krishna Simonse. Have a safe flight back from PAX to the Netherlands. David Somerville of the Planagea RPG setting, Joe Tyler, Graham Ward, John Wilson, and a special shout out to Shawn Hurst. Congratulations to you and to Liz and your new baby, Xander. We could not be happier for you.
It's wonderful.
Thanks to our listeners as well. If you like the show, please consider supporting the Patreon at patreon.com/masteringdnd. What have you been up to in the social media world, Teos?
Success in RPG videos, and I just sent out to the Patreon folks some questions. I've been getting feedback on the next Success in RPG, which I'm going to be wild enough to tackle the question of social media, Shawn. So
that is
we're
very
going to come up
interesting.
with some advice for that. You can find me at alphastream.org and at AlphaStream on Mastodon and Twitter. I'm using Twitter less as I switch to Mastodon more and more. How about you, Shawn?
You can find me on Twitter still at Shawn Merwin. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Mastering D&D. And now the podcast is on Mastodon at dice.camp. You can join our community and ask questions on Patreon. You can also leave comments and questions on the Mastering Dungeons YouTube channel. If our voice isn't enough for you and you need to see our smiling faces, that's where you can go. Hey, Teos. Whew,
yes.
What a recording. So what are we going to do now?
We're going to jump into a displacer. We're going to jump into a gelatinous cube and come out the other side.
Do I need to shower if I do that?
I think that's the best exfoliant money can buy.
So I've heard. It burns like hygiene.